And within the first year alone, I think we had $1 million in sales from service technicians just in Puerto Rico alone, right? You think about scaling.
Holy cow.
Have you ever wondered how successful architecture, engineering, and construction companies scale their business?
Or have you ever wanted guidance on how to get more growth, wealth, and freedom from your AEC company?
Well, then you're in luck. Hi, I'm Will Forat.
And I'm Justin Nagel, and we're your podcast hosts.
We interview successful AEC business leaders to learn how they use people, process, and technology to scale their businesses.
So sit back and get ready to learn from the industry's best. This is Building Scale.
Hey listeners, it's Will here. Our mission is to help the AEC industry protect itself by making technology easy. If you've ever listened to our show, then you know that the 3 pillars of scaling a business are people, process, and technology. So if you suspect technology is your weak link, then book a call with us to see where we can help maximize your company's IT and cybersecurity strategy. Just go to buildingscale.net/help.
Today's guests are Lenny Joseph and Laci Jackson from Bidtracer. Lenny Joseph is a Chief Strategy and Commercialization Officer for Bidtracer, leading global strategy with a background spanning construction, smart building tech, SaaS, and IoT-driven solutions. He's lived and worked on 5 continents, shaping a perspective rooted in education, grit, humility, and relationship building. At Bidtracer, Lenny leads a cloud-based CRM and operations platform tailored for construction, built to scale far beyond bid tracking. Known for his passion and for tech and innovation, Lenny thrives on turning bold ideas into practical solutions. Laci manages key accounts at Bidtracer, specializing in HVAC controls industry, supporting both distributors and contractors. Prior to Bidtracer, she was the national account manager at Alps Controls. She's based in Memphis, Tennessee, holds a degree in consumer science and education with a marketing minor, and brings over 15 years of experience to Bidtracer. So with all that said, both of you, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thank
Yes.
you, Justin.
Yes, very exciting. When we had our first conversation, I very quickly knew I was going to really like both of you. So that's I don't know. I'm such a people person. So I say this and people are like, well, yeah, Justin, you like everybody. But no, I really, really enjoyed the alliteration of Laci and Lenny. That does it for me too. So like simple things like that can just send it over the top. But I said a bunch of nice things. How about you both give us a little bit more your background and a little bit more about Bidtracer?
Laci, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure. I've worked here. I haven't worked here too long. I've been here for about 6 months. Like you said, I did come from the industry. I used to work for 2 distributors, so I come with 15 years of experience. But I personally was interested in Bidtracer, and so I reached out to them about a year ago, wanted to learn more about what they were doing. And I was so interested that I decided, hey, I think I want to go work for this company. So I've learned a lot in the last 6 months. 4 to 6 months, but I'm learning more and more every day here on how we help streamline our customers' workflow. So yeah, it's been an interesting change for me. And that's it. Lenny, I'm going to throw it to you now.
Yeah. That's good. So my history has been pretty long. And then, there's my journey as Lenny, and then there's a journey that I've had with Bidtracer. And my journey with Bidtracer has been I think it really started about 10 years ago. I started working actively with them about 7 years ago. Background is I'm a mechanical engineer. I grew up in Africa. I grew up in Nigeria. I have my bachelor's degree from there. I worked in Europe for a couple of years. I worked in Nigeria for a couple of years. And then I worked in Malaysia for a couple of years as well. And then came over to the United States and got my master's in mechanical engineering at Michigan State. And from there on, I started working for Johnson Controls. And it was the first time I got introduced to the controls industry. So in my previous work experience, I'd worked as a consulting engineer, as a general contractor, as well as a design build contractor. So pretty much had the whole thing associated with, in our AEC industry. I'd worked as a consultant, also worked as a contractor, and here I was getting introduced to the controls industry. And I started off in the controls industry with Johnson Controls as a project engineer, project manager. And over the years, I grew into roles of increasing responsibility until a point in time at which I was running all of Latin America for sales and operations for Johnson Controls. And it was at that point in time that my paths crossed with Bidtracer. And was interesting. It was a very interesting experience, my paths crossing with Bidtracer, because what had happened is I had, and it's very relevant to what we're going to talk about in terms of scaling. We had a continuous improvement director present all the projects to me in Latin America. And as they were presenting it, they presented a particular scenario where they had improved the customer response time from 90 days to 60 days. And I thought, great, tell me about it. The scenario goes like this. A service technician goes out to a job site and he's there to do a regular quarterly maintenance service. And while he's doing that service, the customer asks him for a quotation or a price to do some extra work. And what he would do is he would pick up the phone, call up the office, and tell somebody in the office. Keep in mind, he's a service technician, so he's not authorized to price projects. So he would call up the office, tell the office, this is what we want done. Office will take it and pass it on to a sales associate, and the sales associate is supposed to price it and send it to the customer. Sales associate has a lot of projects on his plate. This little job that the customer wants doesn't get to the top of his priority, so he forgets about it and never prices it. And then 90 days later, when this same service technician is back at the job site, the customer is pissed, and the customer is like, hey, I asked you for a price, you never gave me the price. Then they put a price together, and that was the 90-day window. So then improved it to 60 days. And the way they did it was 30 days before the service tech would show up on the job site, somebody in the office would call up the customer to check on the customer and say, hey, is there anything outstanding from our last visit? Then would get this, there's this quotation. So they prepare the quotation in 60 days. And the continuous improvement team were also happy that they'd improved it. I mean, they literally improved it by, I don't know, 50%, 75%, whatever metric you want to put on it. And I'm just looking at them and I'm like, boy, you guys don't get this. You guys do not get this. I said, let me give you the analogy for it. I said, imagine if you went over to change the oil in your car and you drive up to Jiffy Lube or wherever it is. And there, right while you're there, you tell the guys that are changing your oil that, hey, I want to change my windshield wipers. The guy doesn't give you a price till you come the next time you come around. Because what really needs to happen is you need to be able to give them a price right now. And right as soon as you give them the price, if you have the material in your truck, you need to be able to do a job and the customer pays you and it's all done. It should all be done immediately. So I talked to my boss at that time, whose name happened to be Chris. And I said, Chris, I'm going to get somebody to write some software. And we're going to have service technicians. We're going to give them the ability to price jobs. We're going to give them ability. I'll get them to do credit card transactions. I'll get them to do all of this stuff. He's like, hold on a second. I'm going to introduce you to someone called Chris. And he introduces me to Chris Mehta, who is the founder of Bidtracer. So that is how our paths crossed. And incidentally, Chris came down. I met with him. We knocked out a piece of software. Technicians started using it, and within the first year alone, I think we had $1 million in sales from service technicians just in Puerto Rico alone, right? They think about scaling.
Holy cow!
So this is what technology does, right? This is really what technology does, right? Keep in mind, well, it's not just the 1 million sales. It's also 1 million sales that got executed literally on the same day, without a separate visit to this customer, right?
Just the amount of overhead that you remove from like the follow-up and all of that, like you're essentially cutting out multiple middlemen, right? Even though they're inside of your company, but this is just like hours, right? That as it sort of travels all around the company to get to the right person to execute and then travel back, you've cut out there's so many man hours in that.
And then
and client experience through the roof.
And so the customer experience goes through the roof. The other part of it is all of a sudden now you've empowered employees to take on different roles, right? And you're taking care of the customer. So now service technicians are able to price jobs. And in future, he might decide to become a sales guy. And guess what? He's already prepped for it because he started doing it. And most of the time, the best sales guys are typically guys that have done operations because they know exactly what it takes, right? Was my path crossing with Bidtracer, and then within Johnson Controls, after I did that role, my next role was to figure out as global vice president for smart buildings for Johnson Controls to figure out what the future of Johnson Controls would be in terms of the products that we're going to release, the kind of software we're going to have, as well as the channels to market. And a few months into that role, I decided to pull the plug on my journey with Johnson Controls. A few months into it, I left Johnson Controls very amicably. In fact, Johnson Controls is a very big customer of ours right now. I had very good relationships with them, but I just felt like I needed to start carving a different journey in my journey, right? And that journey was not going to be working for corporations. So this was my step into the entrepreneurial route. So I took that step. And a few months after I left, I was talking to Chris and we were just talking about stuff and he was asking about the stuff I was doing. And I told him that, look, they're not going to go to any corporation, but I would love to help startups scale. And I would love to help startups scale. I know for a startup, for them to get somebody at the C level that understands how to scale, it's going to be too much of a lift in terms of dollars and cents. So I'll be more than willing to come join you. By that you pay me based on the returns, you pay me based on how we grow, and you pay me based on equity in the company. So that is exactly what happened, and I joined Bidtracer. Now, let's talk about Bidtracer and what Bidtracer's history is, because that in itself is a very, very interesting history. Chris Mehta and Samir, they formed Bidtracer. They are childhood friends that grew up together. So they've known each other from when they were kids, from 7 years. I have photographs of both of them climbing trees, right? So they've known each other for a very, very long time. Samir's, I think, a bioelectronics. Laci, what's his background? I keep forgetting. Samir is a bioengineering or electronics engineering. What is he?
They both went to Wisconsin, I believe, right? And got their degrees in engineering, I believe. But
both in engineering. I know Samir's got a weird engineering. I think it's a bioengineering degree he's got, and electrical, I think. And Chris is a mechanical engineer. And his dad had a distribution company, equipment distribution company. So they sell rooftop units, chillers, grills, diffusers, and all that. And Chris went and worked for a mechanical contractor for a while. And after he worked there for a few years, he came back to work for his dad. And when he came to work for his dad, Dad said, look, you guys are all smart. You guys have gone to school. And there's this computer stuff going on. And you guys are really good at putting quotations and prices out there. But your follow-up sucks, because you have so many quotes out there and nobody follows up on it. So every day you get calls for a quote, you're there typing up the quote, you send the quote out and you forget about it, right? So how do we make sure we're able to follow up on this stuff? That is how Samir and Chris came together and they formed Bidtracer, hence the name Bidtracer, to trace the bids.
Makes sense. Very fitting name for the thing that they initially tried to achieve.
That's exactly right. And for the years, our modules and our services have expanded so far beyond Bidtracer. And we keep wondering at some point in time, do we need to rebrand ourselves? Do we need to change our name or something, right? Because people see it and they're like, Bidtracer, what do you guys do? And then I have to explain that we have all these modules that do both sales and operations and this and that is beyond it. So at some point in time, we're going to have to address that, right?
Well, Laci's got a minor in marketing, so she'll tell you should probably rebrand. I don't know. I have no idea. I joke. So
keep it the same. I like it. Yeah.
Okay. You left corporate, though. I want to talk about the differences. Obviously, going into the entrepreneurial world compared to being at a very large company like Johnson Controls. Why take the plunge? Like, what was the not that obviously you still have a good relationship with them, but like there was something that was missing there that you weren't being fully fulfilled. So like what was that thing that got you over the hump to say like, hey, I need to go off and do this thing?
So I'll go back to what you guys talk about typically, right? You guys talk about the three pillars: people, process, technology, right? And I think in the initial calls that you and I had, you asked me what it was, and I said it's people, process, and structure, right? And I'll tell you, you guys have the technology thing, but I technology from a standpoint that you need to use technology for all three facets. So to me right now, it technically is technology, and then you've got people, process, and structure underneath it. Does that make sense? Because you need to be able to apply technology across all, right? So here's what happens for large corporations. They've always known is people, process, and structure. So they create that people, process, and structure so that you can have a predictable business in a manner whereby I can tell my shareholders, I'm going to make this much amount of sales, this much amount of revenue, and this is going to be the profit at the end of the year, right? And I should be able to say that not just for a month, but for a quarter, for a year, and probably a 3-year projection. What tends to happen is every quarter when we release our results, you've got to go stand in front of the shareholders and the whole marketplace, and you're going to tell them, hey, this is what we said we were going to do in this quarter, and this is what we've done. So you've got to have a predictable business. And if you do not meet that predictability correctly, you see that stock prices just fluctuate up and down, right? And sometimes it's amazing. You would see a company that didn't make any profit and their share prices actually go up, and you're wondering, how did that happen? Why did the share prices go up? Well, the fact of the matter is it did go up because they said they were going to do something, and that management team went ahead and did exactly what they said they were going to do. So if now, along with those losses, if that management team is now projecting a future whereby they're going to make profit, shareholders believe they can bet on that number, right? So it's all about believing. So when you go down that predictability thing, you whittle down from the numbers and you go down to every level. You've got to make sure you got solid people, solid processes, the sales, in the lead generation, in the execution. So all of these processes that you put in typically tends to be guidelines. And sometimes those guidelines can also prevent you from being innovative, right? So what tends to happen is that these same things that you need for the predictability of your business, for your growth and everything else, can actually impede you from actually growing. If you are trying to break into a field whereby you need to be innovative. And when you need to be innovative, there are different versions of innovation, right? There's the innovation associated with, hey, I am selling access and now I want to sell suitcases. That is just one step innovation. But if I was selling boxes and now I want to sell airplanes, that's an entirely different thing, right? So
Much
the
larger
reason,
box, an airplane compared to a
much
box. I
larger
agree.
box. So many things that you cannot predict, right? So to answer your question, what needs to happen in the controls industry associated with digitization and digital buildings and everything else happening is a major step change. And I felt that at Johnson Controls, with all the people, processes, and structure that was there, it was going to be a very hard lift to actually make that step change.
Got it. Okay.
That's the reason why I left. Yeah.
I just want to summarize what I just heard and tell me if you agree with this, okay? Right, is structure, process, people, right? Technology is kind of over that. The counterbalance, essentially, proportionality of innovation is how much process you have. So the more process that you have, the more policy you have in place, innovation, the harder it is to innovate, right? If you have less
the more people are involved too, right? You have to get through more people to get the yes out of so many people to actually make something happen. You can get 8 people to say yes, but that one person that says no, they can kill it all, and stop the whole innovation.
This is where it's a bit of a counterbalance, right? If you want more innovation, because innovation can bring humongous scale. If you have too much policy, if you have too much structure in place, then you can't get that done. So smaller companies have the ability to innovate more faster. They might not have necessarily the dollars, not always, right? Have all the surrounding other pieces to be able to be successful in the innovation side, which will eventually go to scale. Would you agree that's kind of how it goes?
And there's one other part that I think the larger corporations need to realize, and I don't think they've realized it, right? So there is a commitment they make to shareholders and everything else, and there's nothing wrong in them being able to innovate. What they need to have is because even innovation, I know it sounds counterintuitive, but even innovation has to have a process, right? There is a process for innovation, right? They really need to have is they need to have a separate business unit is dedicated to innovation and resources that are assigned to that unit, as well as how that unit gets measured, cannot be tied in to the rest of the company. Because the minute it's tied into the rest of the company, you might not get the returns you're looking for, and you start cutting things. And when you start cutting things, you're impeding it. And part of that as well is that group within innovation has to be led by folks that doesn't have the restrictions of veto power from other business units, right? Because you've got to be flexible. You don't want the case that where Laci said 8 people say go and one person says, no, you can't go. And then it pulls everybody down, right? So that is a big portion. And I think what we should think about and look at is, let's talk about cars, for instance, right? Why is it that Tesla was able to bring out electric cars and Ford, GM, Chrysler, Toyota, and the rest of them were not the ones at the forefront of electric cars? And part of it, if you dig deep into it, you'll find out that it's because their innovation was just restricted to just minor improvements on the vehicles and engines that they had. To make that step change, nobody really invested in a division just to make electric vehicles. If they had done that, perhaps they would have done it much quicker than Tesla. In fact, they would have done us all a service, because then you would have had all of these companies having electric vehicles. But they were not able to do it. And it comes down to the structure they have. So that people process structure, there has to be a structure, and that structure has to feed into innovation, right? The other part about it, too. Yeah.
Pause it, because you've said structure multiple times. Okay. Talk real briefly. What do you mean by structure?
Here's what has happened. A lot of the companies, I'll speak specifically to the controls industry. The controls industry is where we're in to a certain extent. It also affects the construction industry as a whole, because the products are going into the construction industry. These large corporations have to figure out how to measure. You remember what I said about predictability and their revenue and sales. So they've got to figure out how exactly they're measuring that. So what they tend to do is, initially, if they have a bunch of products in their portfolio, they've got to make a decision whether they're going to be reporting by product line or whether they're going to be reporting by region. So what tends to happen, if I'm making boxes and I'm making some other stuff, I don't know, fans, I need to make sure my organization for fans is one vertical unit that is covering the whole globe. Do I do it by region and say I report by region, right? So what tends to happen is they end up with this matrix organization, right? And those matrix organizations can become very confusing for innovation, because now nobody has the full responsibility and everybody has the full responsibility, so to speak. So when the innovation's happening, you're going to have regional managers saying, hey, you spend money on that, I'm not going to be able to show profitability. I really am not going to be able to grow. And they stop it, right?
So is that like R&D budget, right? Like, but in innovation, in the innovation space, right? So, because you're totally right, where it's like, if I'm trying to bake everything in, as we're going about this, like, you're inherently pulling stuff away, because that's the only, how can I make a change globally, or a change in a massive way, without pulling something away from something that's currently active, which then that creates the problem, right? Because to your example of the electric cars, it's like, yeah, like, if you're just trying to base upon a Mustang, build an electric Mustang, compared to, like, let's build an electric vehicle that doesn't necessarily have to obey by the principles of a traditional gas-powered vehicle, that it changes how we look at the manufacturing process. Like, it's no longer trying to fit the innovation into the box, and back to the boxes. It is literally saying, like, I don't know, maybe we needed a cylinder. Like, maybe it's something completely different that we were looking at the wrong shape just as in totality. And, like, if we just would have allowed free thinking to occur, then you would have found yourself quicker to the innovation, which then you can then scale, which then actually brings you the dollars in, because at the end of the day, that is the goal, right? Like, hey, we are doing this because it is going to be something that changes for our company or our industry in a massive way, to then obviously become profitable with whatever that innovation is.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
Yeah. So Lenny, were you saying that, like, when you saw Bidtracer, you saw this company that was able to make this impact in this industry, and you met with Chris and you were like, I can work for Bidtracer and actually make a change and do something within my career and have time to make that change, because Bidtracer is one of those companies that, like, we're all about innovation, and you saw, okay, this is a company I want to work for because I can make more of an impact here, rather than working for a large corporation.
That is exactly right, because this other aspect of it is that within people, process, and structure, and I've mentioned it a few times, for you to be successful in driving it, even though innovation has a process, you need to have a culture of innovation. And that culture of innovation comes from the heads, right? So if you meet Chris or you meet Samir, these guys are all about innovation. That's why we're not just tracking bids today, right? So We do so many different modules, and we keep doing so many things in different countries across the world. We have so many different, I mean, we have mechanical, electrical contractors, controls contractors. Now we have painters using it. I have logistics companies that are trying to figure out how to move, how to schedule their trucks in moving goods from different parts of the country, trying to figure out how they're going to use Bidtracer, right? And when all these opportunities come in, I have manufacturers that I'm talking to, and I don't want to name the manufacturer out here, but we've already built a tool right now. You see, you're not aware of it. We've built a tool that is able to manage all of their inventory on their shop floor, so that they can manage all of the stuff coming in, as well as what they're using for different assemblies and things like that. And Laci, you can understand, how we build system kits within our structure. So you take that perspective. That is exactly what manufacturing looks like. For manufacturing, what you're doing, you want to make X, you need components A, B, C, D, E, and F. So if I can track all those things and check the inventory of that, I can figure out how I can make X, right? So the same principles we use for controls contractors, we've taken it, we are applying it to a manufacturer right now, and he's going to be using it as his warehousing tool. And right now we're talking to him, and not only is he going to use it as a warehousing tool and his tool to manage his work in progress, we're going to be sending out invoices from there. Kind of ideas come up, and what happens is that I call up Chris, I call up Samir, I'm like, hey, we got to do this. This one looks good. There's a bigger market here. If we do this for this company, there are so many other manufacturers out there, small manufacturers, and they don't have an easy scalable solution. So we knock it out for this guy, then we can go knock out every single door of a manufacturer that makes $3 or $4 million for the products, and we have a ready-made software that they can use, right? And immediately we get on we start working on it and we get going, and that culture is there. So Laci, to answer your question in a long form, yes, when I met with Chris, it was so clear. I mean, he was the one, think about this. When he came down to meet me in Latin America 10 years ago, I was in Miami. He came to meet me in Miami. I just told him, hey, this is what I want. At that time, Bidtracer did not have a mobile tool. They did not have a mobile phone tool. So what we did there was the initiation of us having mobile phone tools. And when he came over, I'm like, this is what I'm thinking of doing. This is what I want it to look like. What do you think? And he's like, well, we don't do that today, but guess what? Let's go do it, right? And boom, 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 it was done. It was done within like a couple of months, 2-3 months. We were able to call up our programmers, get them in a room. And Laci knows this. I mean, in a lot of meetings with key customers and the rest of it, there's always Chris, myself, or Samir on the calls. We get on those calls so we can understand customer needs properly. We are always there trying to understand customer needs. It is very rare that you will hear no from us. There are certain industries who said, hey, no, we don't do that. But other than that, it's very rare when we get with a customer where they say, hey, do you think you can do this? And most of the times it's like, let's look into it. What else do you want? What else do you want it to do, right? Tell us now, because if you're going to make some modifications, full wish list, let's see what we can do with all of the wish list, right? So that culture has to be there.
That's the innovation side, but the construction industry has been burned by the software industry, right? There was a long time where the construction industry basically didn't believe or was very hesitant to deal with the software industry because, let's be honest, it doesn't prevent someone from swinging a hammer. And that's essentially how the industry kind of looked at it. And they got burned so many times because of promises that were made, etc. Whereas, Johnson Controls, obviously very much related to the construction industry, the people. Well, what about the other founders? How does it relate?
So, they've been burned by software, and I think they're still getting burned. Of the reason. So there's this other balance, right? When it comes to creating a product, right? So, Justin, either of you engineers by any chance?
The technology management engineer. Yes, I do have an engineering degree.
Okay.
Although
okay.
I
Will's
don't.
an engineer. Although I don't know why he's being so shy right now.
I don't tout it very often.
hey,
you don't have the personality of an engineer, I don't think.
The skill.
So you're a good example, Will. I'm glad you're an engineer, because I wouldn't pin you as an engineer. And the reason why I wouldn't pin you as a typical engineer is because you've got that business mindset. You're looking at things outside of the engineering. Typical engineers, and I'm going to say this, typical engineers, a lot of them, 80-90% of them, cannot let go of things until they're 100% right. Is a big, big problem, right? So what they do is they start designing.
Skill, I continually working on it. That is an itch. That is an itch. I'm just going to put that out there. That is why I'm an engineer, but I also have learned to let go.
Fact. Will
But
has
Justin,
gotten better and better over the many years, for sure, no question about that.
before
But
Justin
perfection is
exposes
the
you,
thing that he's looked for historically.
before Justin exposes you, right? It's a fine balance, right? It is a fine balance of knowing when to let go and let it go into production, right? It is a fine balance. So I bring that up because what we typically have in the construction industry is you have software guys that have created products for the construction industry. They are not from construction, right? This is what makes Bidtracer different. We are not software engineers. The guys that lead the company are not soft. We are construction guys, right? So it's a very unique thing because we are construction guys. Same time, we are also engineers. So both Chris and I are both mechanical engineers. So we are both engineers. We have other companies. Other than Bidtracer, we have other companies. And the other companies are active in the construction industry. So because it's active in the construction industry, we are in touch with the market and what the construction industry needs, right? So as we develop the products for Bidtracer, what makes Bidtracer unique is that it does just enough that you really need, everything you really need. And there's a big, fine line there in the sense that with Bidtracer, you can get 80 to 90% of your stuff done. And that's all most people need to worry about, right? They don't need to worry about it being able to do all sorts of things because you've got to have a tool that is appropriate to the problem at hand. And if you look at a lot of the softwares that are out there, the construction industry, they try to fine tune it to the minutest level. That's one of the reasons if you try to talk to any construction company and ask them about their ERP systems, their accounting systems, and they will tell you they've gone to Oracle, they've gone to a few other guys, and they get bills that are millions of dollars to set them up as an account. Guess what? The things that they do, there's a lot of things there that are overkill that are not required. Right. So it's one of those things that we've been challenged with, and we ensure at all times that we are trying to hit all the low hanging fruit of what the tool needs to do, and then we go ahead and build it, and then people use it. Right. So it's hopefully with time, hoping, and I expect construction industry personnel stepping into the software arena because there are so many gaps in the construction industry whereby technology can be applied, to help a company scale, as well as help whole industry progress forward. It really badly needs guys that have construction experience stepping into the software arena.
That the challenge that you then have is obviously all this innovation that is occurring, and like that's the mindset. But scaling up, this counterbalance that we're talking about, like how do you guys approach that? How does Bidtracer say, like, we want to be innovative, however, we also want to create things that we can scale? Otherwise, we're just building a lot of cool shit randomly all the time, and that will not be, the path to glamour and profit and success.
Well, absolutely right. So I'll tell you that within the controls industry, we've got a large percentage of controls contractors using our tool. We started using the controls contractors, the basis to build Bidtracer out because that has the most level of activities from sales and operations and the most complexity in putting stuff together. So in the controls industry, put a package together, you're looking at valves, actuators, a whole bunch of engineering stuff put together, a lot of labor, a lot of hardware and software engineering. So it's very complex. It's not the same as a drywall guy putting up drywall and mudding it, right? Because that is just pretty straightforward. So we built the tool to tackle the most complex part. And we are in the process. We've gained a lot of market share within the controls industry. We are segueing into the mechanical contracting industry as well as the electrical contracting industry. And then we're going to segue into other divisions as we speak. And as we begin to do that, what we're going to do is the team that handles the controls industry is going to be in a structure of its own, right? So we've developed that product. That product is scaling. Processes being implemented in there, so now we can let that thing grow independent of all these other activities we're going to take on. So that's kind of the approach we're going to be taking, whereby innovation is going to be based on the structure that is in place and where we need to apply it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So you're saying you're going to you obviously take the most complicated trade, right? Or you're a very complicated trade, and you build it out, right? Hey, this is that trade. And then from there you go to another, and you go to another and another. And ideally, in the dream, and I'm sure that you've had, is like, it should get easier. One, we've done the work already, but then we're also, doing this for less complex trades down the line, which then should allow us to speed up the being able to create the
development
pieces.
and right.
Development, right. And I'll tell you, Bidtracer, we've been having 20 to 30% growth every single year during the COVID years. Even during the COVID years, we had tremendous growth. It was still the 20 to 30% growth that we've had. I'll tell you one thing that was really interesting, just in terms of data analytics. I'm just going to throw it out there. It's not part of this podcast discussion, but I'll tell you is I noticed that in election years, our business is lower. I don't know if that's in other industries as well, but I would bet.
That's it too.
We've noticed the same.
You have?
We have noticed the same.
Yeah, I just wanted to verify because you guys are talking to a lot of guys in the industry and you might get a feel, but election years growth is actually less because the business is less, and I think it overflows into the first 6 months of the following year, even in terms of construction activity, right?
It's essentially the relief towards uncertainty is our hypothesis, is that people are pausing, not necessarily stopping, right? But they're pausing decision-making, delaying decision-making until after sort of the election has happened, because it affects, not to be political here, tariffs are a thing, right? Even, everything from boycotting to sanctioning countries, the entire supply chain of what the electrical and electrical engineers have huge impacts, right? Like a transformer that, had lead times of 8 weeks, all of a sudden goes to 56 weeks.
To 6 weeks, right?
Yeah, like over a year of lead time on projects is insane, right? And so certainty, what we've seen in different ways, leading to pausing decisions until they've a sense of like the direction of what who the new administration is going to be, and the decisions that they're going to be making. They're not committing to long-term schedules or long-term planning that will get wiped out, right? Because of decisions get made by the type of administration that's in place. Yes. Ask you a little bit about, and just go back to good people. Define that.
See,
how do you define good people? I'm going to ask Laci.
Well, for the role I am in, really, and I tell my kids this too, like getting back to someone in a timely manner, whether you know the answer or not, just replying to that email. If you reply to an email within an hour, the amount of people that don't do that, and if you can be one of those ones that do and you stand out, then people want to do business with you. That's been my experience. Picking up the phone and calling someone, instead of just like texting or going back and forth with an email, you can just pick up the phone and get a decision within minutes. A good person, everyone has their own, description of what that could be. But in the workplace, those are one of the ones that define it for me. It's like, and just being good to work with. Someone that's nice to work with is important, because you can be as smart as you can be, but if you're a total asshole, then people don't want to work with you. So,
no offense to engineers. I've met too many engineers fall in that category.
Yeah. So, for me, people want to work with me because I do get back with them. I answer their phone calls. People can call me on my cell phone. So I think that might be part of what Lenny is talking about.
Yeah, it is. Me being polite, caring, right? So if you care about, so this is one of the things, if you care about your environment, as in where you live, who you are, and everything else, probably will care for the work you do. And if you care for the work you do, you want to do a good job, right? So inherently, you are going to do all the right things, right? If you're that person that is missing the right side of your brain, where the whole emotional part comes in, and sympathy and empathy, like the engineers will, chances that you're a good person to work with is kind of tough, right? The other thing I actually look for, and I used to do this while I was at Johnson Controls, I've interviewed quite a few people, hired a lot of people, would ask folks at the front desk. After the person comes to the interview and all that, I will go to the person at the front desk and ask them, hey, that person coming, how did that person behave? Is it friendly? Was she friendly? Did she talk to you nicely? Did she say hi to you? Was she, personable? Because to me, uh, it's so easy during an interview to show that you're a good person, right? It is when other people are not watching that you really get a feel for who that person is, right? For that reason, I understand if you're a good person, it's very difficult. So you've got to go pick on things that you observe on the side and see how they behave, right? A lot of observation, even when we go out, even with current employees and stuff like that, and I gauge them, in terms of how
Good to
act.
know, Lenny.
Yeah. Thanks for the heads up, right? I do gauge them. I do gauge them. Like simple things like if we are walking, you decide to go dinner, we're going towards the mall or wherever to have dinner, they see someone trying to get to a door and the door is not open and they quickly go grab it and open it for them. Things like that. It doesn't even have to be somebody within our group, right? It just tells you humanity of the individual, the humane aspects of that individual, because those humane aspects of that individual are so crucial in creating the right energy and right environment and the right work environment that you need that is going to help everybody thrive, right?
I met a customer. Oh, go ahead, Lenny. Sorry.
Go ahead,
I met a
Laci.
customer at a recent. I met a customer at a recent trade show, and he came up and he told me his name, and I said, "You sound so familiar." And he goes, "Oh, you're Laci Jackson." He goes, "I talked to you like 12 years ago, and you helped me out." He was like, "I was a small company, and you took the time to set me up, and you took care of me." And he goes, "And then when you went to your new company, you took care of me again. You set me up." And I just had a meeting with him last week, and he's going to be a customer of Bidtracer. I didn't get anything out of it. I just wanted to be a helper and help this man and his company. And now he's a larger company and he's going to open an account with us. And do business with Bidtracer. So there is a saying that people do business with people and not companies. Maybe that's an example of this. I don't know.
It's great. Yep. It's a great, and I'm just going to add on to what Laci said earlier on. Laci mentioned the email stuff, right? Laci mentioned about the emails that you get back to people within an hour. So I was in Malaysia. I tried to get my professional engineering license. They wouldn't let me take the exams for my profession. This is how I ended up in the United States, by the way. I don't think I would have ever come to the United States. Take my PE license, and they told me that my bachelor's degree from Nigeria was no longer accredited because my school hadn't paid some dues. So I'm like, man, I got to get a degree from somewhere where nobody's ever going to question that I am a mechanical engineer. So I decided to apply for my master's degree. I applied to 4 schools: Institute of Technology, New York, Ohio State, the Buckeyes, Sunny Buffalo, and Michigan State. And I had offer letters with scholarships and all that other stuff from all 4 schools. Here's what happened. I got letters from first, I think T first responded, then Ohio State, then it was Sunny Buffalo. And I was holding on and I refused to accept any of the other 3. And I kept telling my wife, listen, I am waiting for Michigan State. I want to go to Michigan State. And she kept asking me why. And I said, look, I don't know what they're going to offer me, but I'm waiting for them because anytime I sent out an email, whether it was to the admissions office or whether I sent it to the head of the Department for Mechanical Engineering or Dr. Foss's lab where I was hoping to work for my master's thesis, I would get a response back within the hour. Whereby somebody would respond back and say, got your email, we check into it, and I'll let you know later on, right? I would get a response. I held on and then accepted Michigan State. And it was interesting when we first came to the US, I had no idea where the Michigan State University was. It was in East Lansing. At that time, this is like late 90s, right? I don't think we had Google Maps at that point. I don't think Google existed. I have a Yahoo email, and I really didn't look on the map to see where East Lansing is. And my flight from Malaysia went from Malaysia to Tokyo, from Tokyo to Detroit, and I had a connecting flight from Detroit to East Lansing. Think about that. You guys know how the distance between it's like 80 miles. It's like so we sat.
That's not that far.
We sat in the airport for about 2 or 3 hours for this connecting flight, and we walk out to the tarmac, and there is this tiny little plane that will take like 6 or 7 people, right? And we get in this plane, and it's on a Sunday, and it takes off from Detroit. I don't think it goes more than 5 or 10,000 feet, and we're just flying over all these farmlands. And my wife's looking at me and saying, "Where the heck are we going?" I love
That's
Michigan State. It's
my
back to
brother-in-laws
communication.
are both Michigan State alum, so I frequently text them anytime Michigan State sports does anything good. I'm like, "Oh, are you burning couches today?" That's all I know about Michigan State. So it's the totality of what I know.
I was there when we won the NCAA championship, by the way, and so
Yeah,
I was
so
there
you
when that
probably saw
happened.
tons of couches being burned.
Yes. I also was there when Tom Brady came into his performance thing, because we played Michigan State versus Michigan. It was my first football game. Tom Brady came in, I think, third quarter or something, and almost won. And I was like, holy smokes, I'm going to be following that guy, right?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So obviously good people. That was a big pull for Laci. So you're in the controls. So I give a little bit more background. You're in the controls industry. You meet Lenny. He seems like a good person like you. They seem to be doing some cool stuff. What sent it over the top for you? What made Bidtracer the landing spot that you wanted to go to?
Because I think that there was going to be growth and change with Bidtracer, that I was able, and I had worked for my old company for over 10 years, and I was just kind of in a rut. So for me personally, I was like, I want to be challenged. I want to be able to have fun and talk about bringing customers like solutions. Because I'd had a lot of that experience in my previous job, and I had just kind of brought on this solution to a large customer, and we had completed it. And so I was kind of like, just kind of standing still for a little bit. When Lenny came on, he was like, Laci, you work for us, and you could keep doing that and bringing these solutions to other customers. And so after a year of talking, I just said, all right, let's do this. I'm ready.
But a year of talking. So,
Yeah.
So being challenged though, that's a big thing. I think, especially leaders, I think we can forget sometimes where it's like, yeah, like people that are driven want to be challenged. And it's not like, let me just do the same thing or let me top out. When I worked at a law firm many years ago, I did literally every year I was just getting promoted to new things. And it was like, I went across the entire administrative side, which was great. But then I hit the end because I certainly wasn't going to become an attorney. I was zero interested in that life, but I hit the top, and then it becomes like, oh, this becomes a lot less motivating, right? And again, a young professional at that point where it was like, I am stuck because I'm no longer challenged because I've literally done the gamut upon where you're going to take me. So I think that is a big thing where people, obviously there's, salaries and benefits and all those kind of things. And like, is it a good fit? But it is what can we do to challenge you, and how can we help you grow? Right.
And I didn't want to look back and say, well, I stayed in this position because it gave me so many PTO days. And I was like, that's not really why I want to stay. I mean, I love where I was, but I didn't want that to be the reason why I stuck around because, so I was like, I really want something different. And long term, this is the better call for me.
Yeah. Not to put you on the spot, Lenny, did it work out so far?
It has worked out perfectly. The question is to Laci if she's being challenged or not. That's a question. So Laci, are you being challenged?
I like that we're mediating this now. This is amazing. We've never mediated, Will. This is fun.
Very much so, Lenny. Yes. We'll talk later, but yes, in a good way, in a very good way. There's days where I'm put outside my comfort zone, which is good for me. So yeah, that's good. It's working out.
Not too much,
Justin.
not too
Yes.
much out of the
Good.
comfort
I'm
zone,
glad to hear
but
that.
enough.
Yeah, I know.
If Laci doesn't like working for the tracer aspect, maybe she can join the music industry and go to all those concerts that I was going to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit because I think the industry to get a little bit smarter, and they're starting to consider things like cybersecurity, right? And so, how are you addressing the concerns of the industry around cybersecurity with what you guys are doing?
Cybersecurity is definitely a big thing, no question about it, right? And the more things are going to get connected, the harder it's going to be. Within Bidtracer, we have everything hosted at Rackspace. Within Rackspace itself, they have their SOC 2, SOC 3, all of those compliances. And in addition to that, we have an external company that we hire, a consulting firm. And it's not just a consulting firm, it is a company that actively tries to hack into the Bidtracer tool. We
For
get a
those
report
for those that don't know or don't understand why that's happening, essentially penetration testing,
Right.
testing for short. It's a way for, instead of you actually hiring a good guy to act like a bad guy, but the only difference is that they're not actually going to ransom you or pull the data out. They're going to essentially kind of, one way is to sort of create holes or look for those holes where they can be created. Common, especially for software, but it gets common the larger you are as a company, because it's a way to manage risk. Ultimately, around risk and risk management is cybersecurity. So the way I would, relate it to the construction industry is, for anyone that has to deal with the EMR, essentially a number. It's a number for safety, like physical safety, right? You have to train for it. You have to do. One's kind of accountable for it. Shared accountability. You ultimately have people like safety professionals that are accountable, but seeing the number of incidents, deaths, where this comes down to. So if you digital safety is the sort of the cybersecurity side. There are ways to deal with that, the risk management, etc. Compliance is actual ideology and framework, showcasing that you have a process, you have a way of doing things, right? And it's a standardized process, and sort of being able to showcase what you are or are not doing. I wanted to kind of talked a whole lot about it on the show, and so I wanted to give a little bit of background. We've landed to non-technical construction professionals. Sorry, Lenny.
No, it's perfect. No. It's perfect. At some point in time, I'm going to take that section of the podcast and we are going to use it for marketing, just so you know. So thank you for that. Because when they
love it.
Because most people do not understand what's going on in the cybersecurity arena. They don't understand, what the compliances do, and particularly penetration testing, right? And what that really means, right? Because you're doing penetration testing, your company, you are taking an active interest in the cybersecurity of your system, and you have to be ready. You have to be ready to hear that your stuff is not secure, or it is secure, or whatever it is. Because when they get in, you're going to have to address it. You're going to have to deal with it, right? And here's the crazy thing as well, is that when we do this penetration testing, and like I said, we've got a company that does it full time. With some of the larger clients that we have, they want to get access to the reports on it. So guess what? They can go and look at the reports and they see, oh, they succeeded on this day, or they did not succeed. See what I mean? So it is a risky venture where you are putting your neck on the line. But if you've done all the due diligence, if you've done all the things you're supposed to be doing, then you should not be afraid to do it, right? It also becomes a sales tool if you've done it well.
It's like someone going through your underwear or sock drawer, right? Like it could be very invasive, right? And you have no idea until you get that report and you're like, oh, if I want to let anyone else know. But the should be treated, right, is we're always there, right? Now you know about them. Now you have a roadmap, because for like non-technical, is like, how much should I be spending on my cybersecurity assessments, pen testing? These are all ways to actually answer that question. And it's for sure, it's a process. It is not a one-time deal. It's not I'm going to buy this thing, this tool, or this whatever, and it's done. It is a continual process in the same way that like insurance deals with workers' comp, and workers' comp directly relates to safety, right? So that whole aspect can apply to digital safety, or AKA cybersecurity.
Right, and I tell you, there's the construction industry should not be afraid to embrace technology as a result, because of cybersecurity. They just need to find the right partners that are doing it right, really adopt technologies. Because, I mean, just within what we do at Bidtracer, we save so many man hours. It is crazy, right? And for those people that do not know, when they don't know how much they could be saving, they really don't know, right? But if they did, it would be a different story, right? And sadly, in the industry, what's been happening is that nobody's adopting technology. Only about 20% of the folks are adopting technology. So the rest of the 80% are just muddling along with their old tools. So in the competitive arena, it doesn't seem like they're getting overtaken. However, they're getting overtaken very quickly. What they don't realize is that we are now building AI into our tool. So now that we build AI into a tool, all of a sudden you are going to see the gaps that they have. And now, instead for them to take, 3 steps to get to where they need to be, they will now have to take 10 steps at once to prevent them from even existing. It's wild what AI is able to do and how they're able to utilize AI. It is scary and wild.
We call it technology debt. Yeah. Well put. Technology debt is it can crush a company, and both on the productivity side of IT, but then on the cyber side as well. Because to your point, multiple layers then of updates and fixing things that don't connect anymore because you're 6 versions behind, and then it's like, oh well, that's not going to work with these 3 different things, and then you have to update these 3 different things, and then it creates a giant pain in the ass. Yeah. But we are getting low on time, so I want to make sure that we hit our last question for both of you. And maybe, Laci, we'll let you go first. If you could go back 20 years, what advice would you give yourself?
Gosh. Okay, that can't, no. What advice would I give myself if I go back 20 years ago?
That'd have been 2005.
Well, now I give this advice to my kids now, right? It's all going to work out. Okay. Don't stress about it. It's all going to work out. Nobody's dying. That's probably what I would say. It's because I'd say that to my kids. It's all going to work out.
I love that. That's a good mindset to have.
What about you, kids stress out because they're going to college and stuff. So it's all going to work out. It'll be fine.
Oh, yeah. As long as they get into Arizona State, that's when it makes sense.
Yeah, 20 years ago, 2004, 2005, right? I'm trying to remember where in my career I was. And I'm very much on the intellectual knowledge side of things in general. I think it's more or less what I wish I had known more than anything else, right? The standpoint that it took me a journey from starting off as a project engineer to a project manager and taking on different roles to appreciate layers of processes and structures and how to handle people along this journey to a point whereby you could potentially have a company that is worth a few $1 billion and you feel comfortable managing it, right? I wish back then there was a source whereby I could have learned about the different types of processes and structures that need to exist depending on the size of a company that I could have studied, right? Because just as innovative as I think I am and as accepting as I think I am in terms of getting feedback and all of that stuff, I can also be pretty stubborn, right? I can also be pretty stubborn and strong-headed. So when there were folks that gave me advice on, hey, I think you should do it this way, if I couldn't understand it, I fought it. I was like, why would I do that, right? And then a few months into it, I'm like, man, yeah, you should have, you should have followed that advice. So I wish there's a roadmap. I really wish, as you guys do this podcast of building scale, because building scale, you can build scale from a small company, from a medium company, from a large company. You always want to build scale. And what you talk about people, process, technology, what does it look like at these different levels, right? So that future guys could read through it. I mean, if you like to read, you're a nerd, then you could possibly read through what's written there and try to learn, and you don't have to learn the painful way, right?
Mm-hmm. That's what we literally make the podcast for. It's literally simple of, hey, you have learned something from another leader. That's what we hope. That's what me and Will always hope, that like, hey, this is just giving back to somebody that like you are removing what we call the entrepreneurial tax. Isn't that right, Will?
Entrepreneurial tax is a very, very painful tax that no one talks about anywhere. And entrepreneur understands this. And, some people call it the stupid tax. It's really hard to be stupid. You've never lived it or experienced it, and no one's taught you, right? So you're paying the tax by paying through the most painful way possible. So listening to any of these episodes, usually there's a nugget or 2 or 3, sometimes 6. That's why we keep these podcasts as long as they are, because the stories, the enormous and the wealth of experience that's behind those words.
Awesome.
I'll tell you that tax you're talking about. I was going to add on, I'm kind of fortunate that I experienced that while I was still working at a corporation, right? So for the entrepreneurs out there, when you're starting from scratch and you have to learn those lessons on your dime, it is really rough, right? So I have just
the tax hurts more when your pocket is getting impacted for sure.
Lessons just keep getting larger as the company gets larger. Oh man, don't even get me started on that.
Don't try to add them up. That's one big advice we give. Don't try to add up all the dollars that could have been, because that'll just hurt your brain.
A bigger one.
And there's only bigger ones to come. This has been a ton of fun. Thank you so much, both of you. If somebody wanted to get a hold of each of you, what's the best way for them to do that?
You can go to bidtracer.com. You can also find us on LinkedIn. Both of us are on LinkedIn with our contact information listed there as well.
Cool. I'm going to drop all the links in the show notes, so that'll be good. And then, do you have anything else you'd like to tell the people before we say goodbye?
I think from
I
my
return
end,
emails within an hour. You can call me on my cell phone. Yeah, we provide solutions. Yeah, reach out to us.
reply, and we are nice people. We're good people.
Yeah.
Good people who reply. Those are very important things.
Right.
Okay. I love this. Listeners, I hope you had as much of a good time as me and Will did talking to Laci and Lenny here today. And until next time, adios.
Thanks for listening to Building Scale. To help us reach even more people, please share this episode with a friend, a colleague, or on social media.
Remember, the 3 pillars of scaling a business are people, process, and technology.
And our mission is to help the AEC industry protect itself by making technology easy.
So if you think your company's technology pillar could use some improvement, book a call with us to see how we can help maximize your IT and cybersecurity strategy. Just go to buildingscale.net/help.
And until next time,
Keep building scale.
Scale.